Nova is here, he's the leader of Alpha, leading the charge. Yeah. With main man Heavy, hit up right by his side at the raid. Together they fight, guards their corner, Rich and Valor, fighting for good. They refuse to back down in this war for justice. They wear the crown. Nova and Heavy Hitter, they rise from the dust. For their cause, they never back down. With Big Boy Leroy, his feet firmly underground. In the face of danger, they fight through it all. Champions of hope, they rise to the top. This one about you today. Feel man was a tree, so we all walk now. Feel like through shadows of doubt, they light up the way. With power and purpose, they seize every day. Their enemy tremble in the dark. Nova and Heavy Hitter, our heroes embark in the big galaxy that's covered by night. They bring the fire and ammunition to ignite. For it's Alpha they serve, their honor was true. Nova and Heavy Hitter, they rise from the dust. Fighting for the cause, they never back down. With Big Boy Leroy, his feet firmly on the ground. In the face of danger, they fight through it all. Champions of hope, they rise to the top. For every shadow, they bring the light. Nova and Alpha, defenders of the right.
Hey kids, this is Pulse Ray Vision coming to you live from Cuatro Cinco Studios in my mom's basement. And we got another reading of Rings of Dust. This is chapter 25, Rachel at the station. Rachel's already at the station, so we might have to change that one a little bit in with Claude here. So that's the first note before we even start. Hey, chapter 25 is called Rachel at the Station. However, Rachel is already at the station in chapter 24, so we might want to come up with a better title. Okay, so we've been reading this. We're up to chapter 25. If you guys want to read the book yourselves, the working draft that's public on GitHub, you can go to t.me/anti-gravity saga on Telegram, and in the pinned messages, there's a link to the book. Or, and you can also just you can read it yourself or have AI read it, because there is a text-to-speech file that we're reading from, that we're fixing and editing in real time for, I don't know, fifth time or something like that, where a lot of the stuff that I've been fixing was supposedly already fixed, but Claude is a dirty, dirty liar. And a dirty liar that takes your money. And so we got to go through it all. And I wanted to make sure there was a copy for everyone to listen to online if they want to just listen to it and not do any work. And so that's part of what this is too, and to get a bunch of feedback before we go to turn this into an audiobook. So here we go, kids. This is chapter 25. The transport burn was the same as the first time. Rachel had done this route before months earlier for the prep visit, the first interview, the data review, the 2 days she had spent on the station learning the layout of what she had helped build from the outside for 11 years. She had braced correctly for the burn at that time. She braced correctly this time. The 2.5G hit her like a hand pressed flat against her sternum and held her there, and she counted, and it released. She opened her eyes on the curve of the earth. The window was small and scratched. The earth didn't care. It was lit the same way it was always lit, white and blue, and indifferent to being observed from 90 minutes of altitude. And she looked at it for the count of 5 because she had learned the first time that this was what she needed to do before she could think clearly about anything else. I'm just going to copy that sentence. There we go. This is a long and cumbersome sentence. It needs to be cut into two or shortened. 5. She looked at her notes. The collective communications team had been on the station for 10 days. 4 people, 2 engineers, and 1 director named Osei, who had worked in broadcast infrastructure for 12 years before the network he worked for was quietly acquired by an Alpha subsidiary and he had left rather than stay. And 1 woman named Priya, whose specific role Rachel had never been entirely clear on, but who had, in 4 months since the prep visit, assembled from components shipped through 6 different collective supply lines, a broadcast studio that looked, on camera, like it had always been there. The studio was in the science module, which Jill had vacated and rearranged with the easy cooperative spirit of someone who understood that the broadcast running in this room was larger than the experiment it was displacing. Ray had moved his equipment to a corner and covered it with a cloth that was, Rachel noticed, the exact shade of the background Priya had specified. You didn't have to match it, Rachel said. Jill looked at cloth. I had cloth, she said. The Federation insignia behind the interview position was subdued, not the centered, dominant version used for official proceedings, but the version used in the context of journalism, smaller, positioned at the upper right of the frame, accurate enough that it read as legitimate, not so large that it read as a claim. Priya had thought about this for a long time. When they see it, Rachel said, looking at the setup, they'll understand immediately what this is. That's the point, Priya said. Give them 1 second to understand it, and they'll believe everything after. Rachel spent 11 years understanding this principle from the inside. She had never heard it stated so clearly. Ray was at the lab bench when she came through. He had the 180-day data on the display, not because he needed to review it. He had reviewed it 100 times, but because having it visible was a way of being sure that it was real. She had noticed this about him on the first visit. He processed certainty through verification. The same data looked at again. The number confirmed not because it might have changed, but because confirmation was its own kind of thing. How are you? She said. Ready, he said. He was wearing the clean shirt Yale had insisted on. You? Yes. She looked at the data on the display, the 33-day curve, the plateau, the 180-day break upward, the interior rate jumping to 100 times every cell, beginning its 11-day exterior cycle, 369 test runs, 369 identical results. There was a second chart on the display beside it, the unlocked data. Walk me through the unlock experiments, she said. Ray looked at the chart. I unlocked cells at different points, some at day 40, some at day 90, some after the 180-day threshold. Different cells, different stages. He paused. Same result every time. The moment you break the lock, everything stops. The 100 times interior growth drops back to baseline within hours. The exterior deposits stop forming. The mini jackpot cycle ends. The one-time jackpot window, gone. It reverts to an ordinary fuel cell. She looked at the unlock curve, the sharp drop, the flat line after. So you can't harvest it and keep it running? You can harvest the exterior deposits, but the moment the lock breaks, the process ends. It's either locked and producing or it's unlocked and it's finished. He looked at the display. Alpha harvested the 11-day output and reset. They had never locked long enough to find out what was underneath it. I've been thinking about how to open, she said. I thought you had the opening. I have an opening. I've been thinking about whether it's the right one. She looked at the curve. I want to ask you about the day you showed Alpha. Ray was quiet for a moment. That's not in the prep material. No. He looked at the display. What do you want to know? I want to know what their faces looked like, she said, when you showed them the numbers and they understood what they were looking at. He thought about it the way he always thought, fully, without hurrying. They were very still, he said. There was a man from the executive decision. I didn't get his name. He went still in a specific way, not the way someone goes still when they're surprised, the way someone goes still when they've just confirmed something. He paused. That's when I knew they'd seen it before. They weren't learning what the number meant. They were confirming that I had. Rachel looked at him. That's the opening. That's not the opening. Jeez Louise. Okay, let's copy this and feed it in there. Yeah, this part needs to be changed because Alpha did not know that you could seal crystals in a fuel cell under negative pressure and create energy. They were trying to figure out what to do with the crystals once they stabilize them. Then, if you talk about these numbers in this paragraph, that doesn't make sense either because he never told Alpha the numbers from Panama. He brought them to the collective. So really, he would just talk about how it kind of blew their minds, and then they fired him, and then they threatened to kill him. The Grand Hall session began at 9 in the morning, Federation Standard. The broadcast was scheduled to go live at 10, 1 hour into the proceedings, after the formal record had been entered, but before the first testimony break. At the precise moment when everyone following the hearing online would be looking for context, for explanation, for someone to tell them what they were watching. Osei had the feed queued. The collective relay network had been routing to the station's transmitter for 6 days. Tested 3 times, tested again that morning. The signal would go through the Meridian satellite array, which the collective had maintained a second access agreement with for 4 years. Buried it in a service contract that nobody at Alpha had ever looked at closely enough to question, and out to every licensed receiver on Earth simultaneously. Jeez Louise, do you know how to write a ridiculously long sentence? Hey, what the hell is this? This is so long. It needs breaks. It needs tightening. Fix it. At 9:47, Osei said 13 minutes. Rachel was in the chair. Ray was across from her. The Federation insignia was in the upper right of the frame. The light on the lab equipment behind them was exactly the color Priya had specified. Rachel looked at her notes one more time, then she set them down. She had not used notes in an interview for 6 years. She'd used them on the prep visit for the data review because the data was specific and she needed to be precise. Today, she did not need them. She had been building toward this interview since before she knew what it was building toward. Through 11 years of Alpha Corp press briefings and energy shortage updates and managed narratives delivered in the measured register of someone credible explaining why things were complicated. Another crackhead sentence here. Are you smoking crack? There are hundreds of these ridiculously long sentences that are just that they're breaking the attention span of the readers. She made herself useful to the people she was working against for 11 years because the moment you were useful was the moment they stopped watching you. They had stopped watching her a long time ago. 5 minutes, Osei said. Outside the module window, the Earth rotated. She could see the Pacific, the size of it, the specific indifference of that much water at that distance. She had grown up watching broadcasts from spaces like this, astronauts doing segments, scientists explaining things from orbit, the authority of height. She had understood, even as a child, that height was a kind of argument. Today, she was making it. 2 minutes. Ray straightened in his chair. He had the specific posture of someone who has rehearsed being relaxed. You don't have to look at the camera, she said. Look at me. I know, he said. I've done interviews. Before Alpha fired you? One, he said, for a materials journal. Nobody watched it. People are going to watch this one, she said. He looked at her. He had the expression of someone recalibrating for an audience size he couldn't picture. How many? He said. Enough. 1 minute, Osei said. The light on the transmitter panel went from amber to green. Rachel Vase looked at the camera. She had the face she always had on camera. Level, unhurried. The specific quality of someone who has earned your trust in 47 previous appearances and has given you no reason to question it now. Lord Almighty. Okay, there's two huge problems with this. First of all, long, stupid-ass sentence, so fix that. Second of all, the specific quality of someone who has, that phrase is used so often in this book. You've got to go find them and fix them. She had built this vase carefully over 11 years for exactly this use. 30 seconds. She thought about DeMint in the Grand Hall, the committee table, reading from the record. She thought about what he was saying right now, the names, the procurement chain, the 8 years of documentation. She thought about the people watching the hearing feed who were following along but not quite understanding the scale of what they were hearing, who needed someone to stand outside it and say, here's what this means, here's the number, here's what the number does to the world. That was her job. It had always been her job. It had just taken 11 years to do it. 10. The Pacific turned below them. 4, 5, 3. Osei held up 2 fingers. 1. The light went live. Good morning, Rachel Vase said. I'm Rachel Vase. I'm speaking to you from a research station in low Earth orbit, where I'm joined by Max Vision, known to his colleagues as Ray, a materials scientist who worked for 3 years in Alpha Corporation's dark matter stabilization division before being terminated for his findings. She paused, 1 beat. The beat she had learned meant the audience was ready to receive something. I want to tell you what he found, and I want to tell you what Alpha did when he showed them. She looked across at Ray. Ray, she said, tell me about the day you walked into that room. Ray looked at her, not at the camera. At her. Okay. Get rid of the second at her. And he told them. When Ray finished, Rachel turned to the relay panel. The connection to the Grand Hall was already live. DeMint's voice came through with the flat compression of a secured Federation channel, reading from the record. Vance Black's written account, the phone call, the caliber, the range, that Marcus Virgil had shot him twice and closed the file as a routine incident. This part isn't written out in this version of the book. In previous versions, we find out that Vance had his recorder on and transmitting it as he confronted Marcus, which is where we hear Marcus do the fake phone call and shoot him and all that good stuff. So that needs to be explained, that was sent to DeMint from the collective. Or, well, maybe not the collective. I guess it was just sent directly from Vance Black, because Vance Black was making a stand and choosing the side of the people over Alpha. DeMint reads it the way a military man reads something he has decided the public needs to hear, without editorializing. Okay, weird, that word's gone. Editorializing. Replace. Without softening, letting the document do its own work. And then he explained what Conrad had been building before Alpha took him, what Iris was supposed to be versus what it became. Conrad's recovered statement, authenticated from the Nevada Vault materials, was read on air. The system learns what it is loved into being. The broadcast ran for 41 minutes. Osei cut the feed at 10:48, 2 minutes before the Grand Hall broke for testimony. The collective relay logged 2 million individual connections in the first hour, more than any single broadcast in the network's 14-year operational history. By the time the Grand Hall reconvened, every major independent outlet on Earth had run a segment. By the time DeMint entered the second testimony period, the number in the broadcast, 33 days, a factor of 10, Unlimited new fuel cells from existing units was in every feed, every conversation, every government terminal that had been refreshed in the last 90 minutes. Rachel sat in the chair after Osei cut the feed and looked at the blank camera for a moment. She thought about the first press briefing she had ever conducted for Alpha Corp, quarterly energy update, project supply curves, the controlled language of a managed shortage delivered in the confident register of someone who trusted the people she worked for. She had been 29. She'd believed at the time in the importance of her own credibility. The idea that being trusted was the same as being useful. She understood now that they were the same thing, but not in the direction she'd believed. Ray was still in his chair across from her. "Is that it?" he said. "That's a broadcast," she said. "What happens next is the Grand Hall." He was quiet for a moment, and after the Grand Hall, she looked at the window. The Earth was past the Pacific now. She could see the edge of the North American continent, the light on the coast. "After the Grand Hall," she said, "the shortage ends not because anyone decided to end it, because 33 days from now, every fuel cell unit that was already running will be charging at 10 times the rate it was this morning. And nobody will be able to explain why it wasn't always doing that without explaining everything." Ray looked at the window. "Conrad figured that out," he said. "Before he built the cell, he knew the 33-day cycle would be the proof. Once it was enough units, you couldn't hide it." Bullshit. Jesus Christ. There we go. I gotta put this in Claude. "Conrad didn't build the first cell. This is stupid. You gotta fix this." Yeah, I mean, Elsa knew it, but not Conrad. "He built the proof into the technology," Rachel said. "He built the world he wanted into the technology," Ray said, and waited for it to catch up. Okay. "These are cheesy, and he didn't build it." Outside, the Terminator line moved across the continent. I don't even know what that means, but it said twice. "This was used on the last chapter, and I don't know what it means." On the other side of it, in a Federation building in a city she had been to many times and was not in today, DeMint was reading from a record that 11 people had spent 11 years assembling. The formal account, the names and the dates and the chains of decisions. The broadcast was the other half of it, the part that made the record legible to everyone who hadn't spent 11 years following the evidence. Rachel thought, we need both. We needed both, the record and the broadcast, the Grand Hall and the station, the formal proof and the person who could explain what the proof meant in a language that didn't require 11 years to understand. She thought, that's why it was me. She was about to stand when Ray said her name quietly, without urgency, in the specific register of someone who has just seen something and is deciding what it means before saying it out loud. This structure is everywhere in the book, and it starts to feel like it tastes worse every time I read it. She looked at where she was looking. WTF. He had turned in his chair toward the tracking panel on the station's outer wall. Jill was already at it. She had moved without sound, with the trained efficiency of someone who monitors instruments as reflex rather than procedure. Saturn, Jill said. The panel showed it, a gravitational signature change in Saturn's outer ring plane. The outer rings were moving inward, not drifting, moving, with a measured directional force of something that had been building toward this for a long time and had now begun. That's the rapture, Ray said. Jill ran the overlay ship positions in the Saturn ring plane, last log coordinates, the window before the field sealed. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The Golden Dawn was inside the ring plane, Ray said. The panel ran its numbers with unhurried precision of an instrument that did not know what the numbers meant to the people reading them. Outside the module window, the Earth kept turning, the broadcast was over, the data was out, and somewhere inside the closing rings of Saturn, the ship that Kolnova was aboard had just run out of the time it had left. She stood up. Good interview, Osei said from across the room. Yes, she said, it was. She looked at Ray. Thank you, she said. Not for the interview, for the 11 times he had run the experiment in the back of a room in Panama. For the 30 grams in a bag between his lunchbox and his headphones. None of that happened. For walking home with his box of being in his apartment when Red and Squirrel knocked. No. None of this shit happened. He didn't run experiments in Panama. He did research. And he didn't put 30 grams in a bag between his lunchbox and his headphones, dumbass. He did it at work in a locker. You really got to go through every time Ray and the experiment and the fuel cells are mentioned and read the lore Bible and make sure that this crap quits showing up and being hallucinated. Ray understood what she meant. The bus always does, he said. What? The bus always does. Thank you. The bus always does? What? The bus always does, he said. She laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in a week, and it was a real one. She let it be a real. Outside the window, the Earth kept turning. What the hell does this mean at the end of the sentence? All right. So that was a somewhat confusing chapter 25. That's going to be added to the playlist. You can hear all of these on YouTube and the playlist. So go check them out. If you guys want to know more about the cryptocurrency project that is inspired by this novel and also inspires this novel, then go to agproject.io and connect your wallet, and you can mint fuel cells and you can lock them up and you can play the game with a real cryptocurrency that's tied to real money somewhere. Anyways, I'm going to be streaming later tonight with updates on the project. Like I said, if you want to check out this book, go to t.me/anti-gravity saga. Join our Telegram. That's where the party's happening, where you find out the first things you can find, like where to buy the cheapest darker matter. So thanks, guys, and we will catch you on, oh, that's a long song. We'll catch you on the next one. Ciao.